Imagine living in a world where the colors you see, the emotions you feel, and even the way you keep time are all in some way influenced by the language you speak. Could something as simple as the words we use every day really shape what we notice, remember, or even believe is possible? This question isn't just a philosophical curiosity. It's at the heart of one of the most fascinating intersections of linguistics, psychology, and culture. Today, we dive into the ways language might shape the very way we think, interpreting what we see and how we see it. To start, let's turn to an idea captured thousands of years ago. In the ancient text of Genesis, there's a famous story about language and understanding. The story describes how humanity, once speaking a single language, began building a tower to reach the heavens. As the narrative goes, "Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they will not understand each other." Pause for a moment and reflect. The story doesn't just treat language as a tool for communication. Losing a shared language is depicted as losing access to shared understanding itself. Without mutual words, the builders become unable to coordinate, unable to think together in the same way. Is it the loss of speech or the fracturing of thought that ended their great ambition? This idea, language as more than just a label for things, but as the actual key to connecting minds, is a theme that pops up again and again. Let's move from ancient myth to a more poetic exploration of what language can do. The poet Emily Dickinson once wrote, "A word is dead when it is said. Some say, I say it just, begins to live that day." What does it mean for a word to begin its life the moment it's spoken? Dickinson is pointing out that language isn't simply a passive record of our thoughts. Speaking a word can spark new ideas, change perspectives, or plant seeds for entirely new concepts. It's as if language gives form and structure to what is possible for us to think. But does the structure of our language itself, its grammar, its vocabulary, its metaphors, nudge our minds in certain directions, or even block off some paths of thought entirely? Consider time. In English, we talk about the future as ahead and the past as behind us. But what if your language viewed time differently? In the language Aymara, spoken in the Andes, the past is described as being in front of you, because it's visible and known. The future, on the other hand, lies behind you, unseen and unknowable. That reversal is more than just a quirk. It reflects a different fundamental metaphor for time itself. If you grew up always saying, "The past lies before me," would that shift the way you remember, value, or understand the flow of life? Reflection. It's easy to assume that everyone divides up the world in similar ways. But even the basic metaphors running through our language can subtly direct our attention, affecting what feels obvious or even possible to imagine. Let's look at another example, this time from philosophy. The philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein is famously remembered for saying, "The limits of my language mean the limits of my world." Does this mean we can't think about things we have no words for? Or does it simply mean our minds are guided, widened, and occasionally boxed in by the tools we inherit from language? Some languages, such as Russian, have multiple distinct words for different shades of blue. Speakers of Russian are, in experiments, often quicker to distinguish these blues from one another than English speakers, who are more likely to lump them together into a single category. Reflection. Is it that Russians literally see more shades of blue, or does having more words make them notice the differences more quickly? Maybe both. The categories created by a language don't just label the world. They cause us to pay attention in specific ways. Let's bring in a classic line from literature. George Orwell, in his novel 1984, imagined a government that deliberately uses language to shape and limit what people can think. Here, the regime invents Newspeak, a language designed to make rebellious thoughts impossible, and a character warns, if thought corrupts language, language can also corrupt thought. Orwell's warning is clear. If you control the words available to people, you control what they can even dream of. Without the concept of freedom described by a word, can anyone fight for it? The question, then, is whether our real-world languages have this kind of power. Studies show that people who use languages with gendered nouns, even for non-living things, sometimes attribute masculine or feminine qualities to them unconsciously. For example, in German, bridge is feminine, while in Spanish it's masculine. German speakers may describe a bridge as elegant or beautiful, and Spanish speakers as strong or sturdy, reflecting their language's grammatical gender. Reflection. This isn't just wordplay. The grammar we grow up with quietly weaves itself into our perceptions, even infusing objects with character, simply because that's what the words suggest. Here's another poetic moment, this time from Shakespeare. In Hamlet, the character Polonius says, "Give every man thy ear, but few thy voice." On the surface, it's advice about listening more than speaking. But look closer. Isn't it also a reminder that expressing something in words, giving it voice, brings an idea into existence for others? Until a thought is spoken or written, it stays private, perhaps even undefined. Reflection. When we choose words, when we speak, we're not just sharing what's in our heads. We're shaping those thoughts, fixing some edges while blurring others. We edit reality as we translate it into language, sometimes for ourselves as much as for anyone else. Consider a practical example. In some Amazonian languages, there is no way to count beyond 1, 2, many. That doesn't mean speakers of these languages can't tell if there are 5 coconuts instead of 3, but it does show how language can focus attention on what matters most in an environment. Quick distinctions rather than precise counting. Reflection. Tools can change what we're able to do. Think of how a ruler lets you measure what you couldn't before, or a clock lets you cut time into usable pieces. Language is a similar tool. It enables, enhances, and sometimes confines. A famous speech makes this point indirectly. Maya Angelou once said, "We are more alike, my friends, than we are unalike." The words bring people together, suggest common ground, and dissolve division. But also, the phrasing, the rhythm, and the repetition shape how we feel and what we focus on. Language isn't just a vessel for ideas. It's a builder of feelings, of unity, of perspective, reflection, the very structures that separate our thinking, as in the Genesis story, also empower us to collaborate, remember, imagine, and overcome. So where does this journey through words, poetry, ancient stories, and science leave us? Is language a cage that limits what we can imagine, or a ladder up which our thoughts climb to new heights? Probably both. It reflects the reality we live in, and at the same time, quietly reshapes it, through metaphors, grammar, and vocabulary. Our minds are flexible, creative, and capable of surprise, but always, it seems, through the lens of the language we know. And so, next time you reach for a word, pause to wonder, are you naming something that was already there, or are you inventing it, crafting the edges of your thought, choosing which possibilities to see and which to let slip away? Because sometimes, the most powerful idea isn't the one we already have words for. It's the one that language, in any form, lets us finally see. And maybe, just maybe, every new word, every new way of speaking opens a tiny window, a glimpse of what our minds have always been capable of imagining, if only we had the language to let it live.